Today we will be looking at the movie 16 Candles, and we'll be evaluating its 15 elements of mise en scène. And although this movie is an older movie, I did find a scene that contains all 15 elements, and it is a very good example of these things. So before we start that, I want to get into the characters, because this trio right here, there's two characters within the scene I'm using, and I think it's appropriate that I give you a little bit of a background and brief background behind each character, because it's going to help you overall understand the scene. So this right here is Jake. Jake is a popular senior, and he's currently dating another girl. And then this right here is Sam, and she has a crush on Jake. She's a sophomore. So that's just some background information, and now I'll get on to the 15 slides. Okay, when we first look at mise en scène, we look at the dominance or the dominant figures in each scene. So we ask the question, where is the eye attracted to first? And more importantly, why? So when we look at this image, we see two characters, but I would say Sam stands out more than Ryan, no offense, because she's wearing a pink dress, and it is something light, and your eye is immediately attracted to it. I'm going to get into the reasoning behind this in color in another slide, but for now, I would say she is a more dominant figure in here because your eye is attracted to her. Next is lighting key. Now, lighting key is essential. It kind of gives the viewer some sort of sensation, a subtle sensation of emotion. So in this image right here, I would say the lighting in this image is moderately high key, because when we look towards the centerpiece of the image, it is very light and bright, and it does have a high contrast between the two because you can deliberately see the focuses of the subjects. So you can see here Sam and Ryan, and you can see the birthday cake. The only reason why I would say it has a little bit of low key is just because the edges around the characters are a little bit more dark. But other than that, I would say this is a high key. Now we'll be moving on to shot and camera proxemics. So when we're evaluating an image or a film video, we really want to look at the shot type. So here in this 16 Candles image, screenshot that I took of this scene, I would say this could be a long shot and a medium shot. A long shot because it has the character's full body in it, and I think that's an important piece to a long shot. And because it's a medium shot, I would say the background kind of tells you it's more of a medium shot because it's not so landscape and spread out. It's more closed in. So I would lean more towards a medium shot, but it could also be a long shot in some people's eyes. Now we have camera angle, and this is also just as important as shots. So what you want to ask yourself when you evaluate something is the camera angle looking down or up at the subject? So if it's looking down at a subject, it could probably shows it belittles an subject, or it makes it seem smaller than it is. And when the camera angle is looking up, it shows power and dominance. But when it's at eye level, it shows concentration on the subjects being shown. So in this specific image that we're evaluating, I would say this is eye level because it is showing the two characters and it's showing equality. It's showing all of that within this image. So therefore, it is an eye level angle. Color values. So when we're looking at this image, we want to ask ourselves, what is the dominant color? And we want to talk about color symbolism. Okay, when we look upon this image that we are given, we can look at the color values. And this will help to show emotion or give off hints of different expressions and can help the viewer understand more as what is going on in the picture. So we want to ask ourselves, what is the dominant color? So in this image, I would say it's brighter hues. It's warm colors such as orange and pinks. It really expresses happiness. And you can also look at what's going on in the image. For example, we know Sam, her dream crush Ryan, is celebrating her birthday with her, which is a happy thing for Sam. So that's why it kind of gives off a warm tone. And now when we look at color symbolism, we can look at Sam because we talked about earlier how she was more dominant over Ryan in this image because of the color of her dress. Our eyes are directed more towards brighter things, and brighter things show happiness and pureness, and that's why Sam is most likely dressed in this pink dress. Alright, so here you can see what I was talking about a couple seconds ago. Sam is wearing this pink dress, and Ryan is wearing darker apparel. He's wearing a green/a brown shirt here. And the pink dress kind of represents, like what I said before, pureness. It could also represent wholesome and different things like that. And it also attracts your eye because it is lighter. And in this case, Jake's outfit here is darker. And it doesn't represent that he is a dark person necessarily, but he is not the first one drawn to because he is not the main protagonist in this movie. Lens and filter stock. So when we're looking at the image given, it's important to see if there's any distortion in the corners or the center of the screen because this can help determine what lens is being used. So when we're looking at our image of Ryan and Sam here, I would say the lens is not a wide angle because there's not much depth in this image, and there are several planes in focus, so I don't believe it is a wide angle. The lens is probably long, but not necessarily a telephoto lens because of the depth, and it's not compressed. So I'm not sure if it really fits any of these lenses, but I would say that the stock of this image is slow because of the high quality this image has and the features that stand out. So that's why I would say the stock is slow. Now we will look into subsidiary contrast. And when we're looking at this image, you want to ask, where does the eye focus upon next? Are there other main objects in the shot besides the dominant? So we already concluded that in this image, Sam is the dominant in this image and has dominance because of her dress, we said the color, and also because she is more the protagonist in this film. She's the main character. Another important piece to this is subsidiary contrast. So where does your eye focus upon next? So as we see Sam here, we also see Jake. Jake is the subsidiary contrast in this image because he is yet the other protagonist in this film. And your eyes do focus on him next because he is a human-like form like Sam. So therefore, I would say he is a subsidiary contrast in this image. So when we look at density, when we're evaluating this mise en scène element, it's more as an abstract form. So when we look at this image, you want to ask how much visual information is packed within the shot. So I would say this image doesn't have a lot of density within it because we really are focused upon the two characters that are the protagonists in the film and the cake. There really isn't anything else, and I would say that because they are more in focus. So therefore our eyes focus on them more. Although there's this window and this curtain in the background, it doesn't take up density. It's not a form of density. So therefore this does have a low density. Now we'll be talking about composition. And this is also an abstract, but to figure out a composition, you can ask the question, is the space shown segmented and organized? So when we look at this image from the movie 16 Candles, we see these two characters. We have Ryan and we also have Sam. And you can assume since there's two of them, this is a binary composition because bi means two. So therefore that can be a binary composition because there's two characters in one scene. So also we can observe the senses. So this would be a vertical sense because the characters are facing each other and they're sitting in almost the same position. So that's why we can assume it is a vertical sense. For form, there are two questions that need to be asked. Is the fragment opened or closed? Are visual elements within this image balanced? So in this image, like I said, we always have our two characters and we have the cake. And these are the most important pieces, the characters and the cake. So basically, we could say that this is a closed form because all the necessary characters and information is confined in one neat space, opposed to it being open and have a high density of things within it. So therefore, you can say this is a closed form. Now moving on to framing. So you want to ask, can characters freely move or are they confined to one place? When we look at this image, they're more confined. But in order to define what kind of framing it is, we have to understand two things. There's tight and loose framing. And if we click to the next diagram here that I made, I have two boxes here. And you can see the characters are actually towards the edge of the frame. And the characters are close together and near. But it's almost as if they're towards the edge and they're being confined into a small area. So you could say that the framing on this image is tight. Depth and field. So when you're looking at depth and field of an image or video, whatever it may be, you really want to figure out what the focus is within the image or video. So in our image here of the 16 Candles movie, this is the last scene of the movie, but in focus, we have our two subjects. We have Sam and Ryan, who are the main characters within the film. And then we also have the cake in focus. So part of what depth of field does, it does emphasize their importance opposed to the background. So when we click on my diagram here, I have an arrow pointing to the background that says unfocused. You can clearly see it's unfocused because of the fuzziness and the way it looks. It isn't in focus, it isn't sharp. Like how I have the arrows pointing to the characters and also to the cake here. Everything's in focus and is sharp, and you can see the emphasis that the cinematographer has put on these people because they want to emphasize that they are important and they are a deliberate part of the story. Now we can take a look at character displacement. So when we're trying to find out what the character displacement is, you want to ask yourself, what part of the frame do characters occupy? Do a character or characters occupy, basically? It could be multiple people. So when we're looking at this, you want to ask yourself, do they occupy the top, the bottom, the right, the left, or the center? So I'm going to give you a second to look at this image, and you can interpret what you think it is. Okay, here's the reveal. So here I have the image a little bit more zoomed in so you can see more clearly, but here is the axis of thirds, or the rule of thirds axis, and I found this off the internet and I basically placed it over it, and it clearly shows that the two main characters are within the center. And this is important because it shows their importance, it shows their equality, it shows how basically that they're centered and that they're the center of importance within this film. So that is why the center means so much. Staging positions. Staging positions often involve the characters or objects within a scene. So you want to ask yourself, which way do the characters look based on the camera? So right now what we can see is we have our two main subjects here, and they're staring at each other. But this looks as if it's a side view, but that's not what it's called. What it's actually called is a profile. And profiles are a deliberate way of telling the audience that a character is deep in thought. So here both of them are looking at each other with a profile. And this kind of tells you that they're thinking about the moment and they're thinking about each other. And that's why staging positions are so important, because they help the audience suddenly get this clue. Character proxemics. What is the space between the characters? Now, this may seem obvious. There are a bunch of different answers that can answer this question. So when we're looking at our two subjects, we want to look at the space in between them. So when we go to my diagram here that I have, this bar that I drew in, it looks as if this is an intimate distance. And you could say this because they are tender and they look like they are in love. And it looks like this is being shown. And spoiler, they do end up kissing. So this can be a character proxemic, and this is intimate distances.